What if the resurrection from the dead could be proven? It would change the world. It would give us hope beyond the grave. This isn't an hypothetical question, because in this video we will show that it already has been proven. By him. A still image of this event exists today. But why is it so unknown, and the truth so suppressed? This is the burial cloth of Christ. It's a 14.5 foot cloth. The image is of a crucified man and cannot be replicated by any scientific lab or technology today. As a positive image, it reveals a photograph back and front of the man. But how is it not known by the world and not recognised or consistently in the mainstream media? To answer this, we have to take you through its brief history since the scientific world became interested in it, and why, since more evidence has been found, it's often ignored by the media and the world. Back in the 1970s, they tested a normal 2D photograph and the shroud in a 3D reader. What they found was that the normal photograph did not render much. There was no contours or lines, nothing that would give the 3D effect. But the shroud image was a complexity of darker and lighter shades that made it into a 3D image.
All of a sudden we're seeing contrast that has something to do with height and depth, real distance. The nose has a prominence, the cheeks roll off, the hair has a shape to it and is rounded. The whole image has dimension to it.
The results suggested that the shroud image could have been created by a real human body.
The shroud is a very unique image, the only one of its kind in the whole world. Nothing else like it. Three-dimensional relief, the front and the back of a whole human being. Only one in the world. No other, nowhere, no how, no way. I don't know any way to make it. I've never heard of a way to make it. Just the Shroud of Turin.
In 1978, a set of scientists known as the STIRP team began work on the Shroud of Turin. They gathered as much data as possible in 120 continuous hours. Their conclusions would deepen the mystery and send the Shroud of Turin to news articles and media around the world. What did they conclude?
From a statement, in short, they said this: no pigments, paints, dyes or stains have been found on the fibrils. X-ray fluorescence and microchemistry of the fibrils preclude the possibility of paint being used as a method for creating the image. It is clear that there has been a direct contact of the shroud with the body, which explains certain features such as scourge marks as well as the blood. However, while this type of contact might explain some of the features of the torso, it is totally incapable of explaining the image of the face with the high resolution that has been applied, demonstrated by photography. We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of a real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. The bloodstains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum albumin. The image is an ongoing mystery. It sent shockwaves around the world with the media. Could this be the final proof of the Messiah? The Catholic Church was swift to purchase the cloth in 1983. with the interest from the world and that the cloth was looking more likely to be authentic. To many it seemed that the death and resurrection of Christ was about to be established as historical fact by this cloth. People were calling for further tests. It was about 5 years later, in 1988, scientists were allowed to carbon date the Turin Shroud. However, by 2008, a scientific paper proved the test was false, either by accident and bad science, or a deliberate act to stop the optimism of this being an authentic still image that captured the resurrection of Jesus Christ, his name in Hebrew, Yeshua.
If you happen to hit a place where a yarn segment from the original shroud was spliced into the new reweave part, the splice very definitely shows the new yarn that was being put in and dyed to match. The only thing in the shroud that was dyed or stained was this radiocarbon area. So my hypothesis at the moment is that this was done on purpose to fool your eye. I'm coming to the conclusion that it has a very good chance of being the piece of cloth that was used to bury the historic Jesus.
He writes a paper that's accepted for publication in Thermochemica Acta, January of 2005. And that paper is the only peer-reviewed science that challenges the carbon date with anything credible up until that point in time.
The radiocarbon date, even though now proven wrong in 2008, had already cast a dark shadow over the cloth since the year 1988. The media back then were quick to proclaim the Turin Shroud a fake, but these new evidences that were being found were barely making ripples in the media. Yet what was found out about the shroud since then was groundbreaking and proves its authenticity. In John's Gospel, it mentions not only the linen cloths, but the head cloth wrapped up by itself. Today this cloth exists called the Sudarium, and is a forensic match to the shroud by blood type AB and by blood pattern. This cloth also has a documented history back to the 6th century AD in Jerusalem, which puts the shroud further back in time. Scientists also found myrrh and aloes on the headcloth and the shroud, and it's also recorded in John 19:39 that Nicodemus brought these spices for Jesus to be buried with. What they also found in both cloths was limestone from tombs in Jerusalem and the Damascus Gate, especially around the knees, feet and face of the shroud image. From when the STIRP team began during the 1990s and onwards, they found out that the hemoglobin blood on the shroud was not only type AB, but had large quantities of bilirubin, a substance that's normally found in the blood of a tortured victim and preserves the blood red colour. With the side wound caused by a spear, as recorded in the Gospels to check whether Christ was dead, under ultraviolet light they noticed plasma around the wound, which the Gospels correctly record as water and blood. There is blood flow from a crown of thorns around the head. There is also blood flow on the arms protruding from the wrists from the nails from crucifixion. Also scourge marks everywhere back and front of this man, also consistent with the Gospels. Blood marks around the back of the head and scourge marks on the back. From these scourge marks they identified a Roman flagon whip similar to one found near Pompeii, dated to AD 79, that caused the marks. The shape was consistent with the dumbbell shapes at the ends of the whip. The blood on the shroud has also been confirmed by forensic scientists. Dr. Sebastian Rodante said this: "The perfect correspondence of the 4 red blood clots gives us the certainty that the shroud covered the corpse of a man who, while alive, endured the lesion of these blood vessels." Professor J. Malcolm Cameron, Professor of Forensic Medicine, said, "From the evidence of the blood stains alone, this is clearly not a human forgery." The blood is in fact real blood, confirmed by the presence of heme, porphyrins, bile pigments and serum albumin, confirmed also by spectrographic analysis, said Dr. John Heller. This means that the red stuff on the shroud is emphatically and without reservation nothing else but blood, said Dr. Alan Adler, a professor of chemistry. Dr. Behmer Balone, professor of forensic pathology, said all this proves and confirms that on the shroud there are effectively real and complete bloodstains conserved in their various components. With all this physical and forensic proof, we come to one question that most people come to when they see that with all the evidence, Jesus Christ, Yeshua in Hebrew, will go through all this excruciating pain to die on a cross. The answer is simple: love. But God tells us why in Romans 5, chapter 6.
For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Much more then, having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if when we were enemies we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only that, but we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received the reconciliation. Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin,
But it's this image that we have on this piece of cloth that is the mystery. How was it formed? No scientist can replicate it. But this is something we'll be looking at in part 2 of the video. How his resurrection could have caused the image. Please subscribe to my channel for notifications of part 2 of this series and future videos. So when you go to my channel, you just click the subscribe button, and then once you've clicked the subscribe button, you just click the notifications bell so that you receive notifications. If you want to help support this channel and help us create more videos and better quality, you can go to the description below on this video, and there are a number of options and links to click on.